Today's presentation of The Bias Buzz is brought to you by Accuracy in Media, your leader in fairness and balance. Please follow us on all forms of social media at the conclusion of this presentation.
Welcome to The Bias Buzz, powered by Accuracy in Media. I'm Don Irvine. He's Brian McNichol.
Good morning.
Good morning. All right, lots to talk about today, and we'll start off with Donald Trump and the polls. That has thrown the liberal media into a little bit of a frenzy. They don't want to really acknowledge that that the averages now are showing that Trump has got some momentum and that he has gained a lot of ground on Hillary and is ahead in some places.
You know, it's interesting. There is this lag in understanding of that, right? Because it's like you say, it's changing rapidly. It's changed about 11 points in about 3 weeks. And the stories you see in the mainstream media, the New York Times, Washington Post, are still like Hillary has a big structural advantage that Trump will be difficult. It would be difficult for him to overcome. And you see these stories that say, here's how Trump could possibly eke out a victory. And it's like, guys, the way he's going to eke out a victory is he's surging ahead. He's gaining voters. He has Jack Nicklaus endorsing him. You know, people from all walks of life are saying, yeah, this is what we want. Let's try this. Let's give it a try. And that has not been caught or felt or captured yet, but it's coming. He has huge amount of momentum advantage over her right now.
Right, and I think, you know, with regard to the media on this, too, it's I think the Washington Examiner did this, maybe some others did this. They looked at the Washington Post story after the polls came out, and they said it was 219 or 220 words in to their article that you discover all of these things about Trump. The articles really started to talk about the negatives about Trump and Hillary, just trying to bury that lead, in essence, I guess. Is just we all know that they're not universally liked, but the idea that for the Post is that we can't tell people that Trump is actually ahead. That's, that'd be horrors.
Right. Yeah, the most important thing for you to know is that they're both terrible, since we can't say Hillary's winning anymore. Right, and it's like we're both terrible. They're both terrible. They're both terrible. But people are choosing Trump in increasing numbers. The Republican Party, all the early opposition. There's still a big never Trump. There's still a big group that's never going to change on this. But there's also now a big group that is finding their way to it.
Right, and including Paul Ryan, who this morning is going to now back Trump. So, we'd been waiting for that. He hadn't committed to that, and Trump he's trying to put a little pressure on Governor Martinez in New Mexico to get her on board, and she probably will come around, but there's still time. There's still plenty of time for that, right. I think.
And I think that the rapprochement with her will be good for him, because what does he say to get her on his side? Things he probably should be saying anyway. It's like, we're not anti any certain group of people. We're trying to make our country safe and economically sound. Whether you agree with that argument or not, now it sounds mean-spirited, and she may provide him a vehicle to soften what he looks like in that part of the world.
Though yesterday, they had probably one of the more violent anti-Trump, where I'll put air quotes around it in terms of that protests. But once again, I feel like I do with every single one of these large protests. It's just this amalgamation of the left. Some of them are anti-Trump, but there's a lot of them that are from Black Lives Matter and all these other organizations. They're just looking for an excuse to have a demonstration and just cause a riot or whatever, just create some havoc. It's not really about Trump that much.
It's almost like a rock band going on a havoc tour. Instead of going and playing music in every town, they go and create havoc in every town, and it's the same people, and in many cases it's the same exact humans. It's not just the same groups, but the same individual people just roving around the country, getting themselves involved in these things.
Right, and we don't even know how many of these people are being paid by the George Soros types and things like that. So you're probably right. There are probably some of these that are actually paid to travel to kind of organize these things and instigate these kinds of things and get the people going. Because kind of once you start, the emotion starts taking over, and then you just get all this nonsense that develops, they want to make it look bad for Trump, but to me, I take the view of this is that when they do this, they're hurting their cause. They're not really hurting Trump in this case, and Trump usually has a very good way of brushing that off and dealing with these
he
things.
has a very good way of it. And one of the words that you use there that has been huge in this campaign is instigate. There are people whose only function in this is to instigate, is to create discord, right? And at some point you have to look about whose interest is discord, whose interest is progress, right? And let's work with the people who are interested in making America better, but the people who are interested in creating strife, I think that's one of the things Bernie Sanders talks about is, it ought to be messy. There ought to be a big fight and argument and scrap every day. I don't know. I don't think that's the way America views it. I don't think if their issue is dysfunction in Washington, I don't think sending thugs around to, campaign rallies, gets you to the end of dysfunction.
Right, and how does that play on as we get closer to the general election? I mean, Trump and Clinton are going to be the nominees, and then so we're going to go from this primary phase to the general election phase. Do these demonstrators still come out and do this? How does Clinton react to this? I mean, there could just be a lot of things. I mean, if there's a Clinton, the first Clinton-Trump debate, are the protesters going to come out and protest that as well and create havoc? That certainly probably won't even sit well with the Democrats.
Right, and if you look back at American electoral history, in Nixon's time we called it law and order, but I mean you cannot win an election favoring general disorder. People want some level of order in their lives, and they think that the government is responsible for order.
Right. You can't get through with this anarchy, right?
Right.
All right. So talking about Trump some more, I just came back from Louisville, Kentucky, the NRA meeting. Trump spoke there. He was, I guess, their leadoff speaker, their featured speaker on Friday. It was quite an event. Once again, as we've talked about Trump during the campaign, he draws these huge crowds. It's just amazing. So what happened here, was amazing. That I was sitting around the press room and trying to figure out why the feed hadn't started for his speech, only to find out that the line was so incredibly long, combined with Secret Service trying to check them through, that they were just struggling to get everybody into the arena to get them seated for the event. That event started an hour late, and it's all because of Trump, the Trump effect.
Right.
It's amazing. And I want to say on top of that, listening to a speech, listen to a Donald Trump speech is interesting. He definitely was kind of in the mode, for talking about guns, even though his history with guns is a little sketchy, I think.
Right, I was going to say, it's sort of a no-brainer for the NRA to endorse him because, the opponent is a dedicated gun grabber, right, her entire political career. But, he has a checkered past, as you say, on this. And the fact that he has them enthusiastically behind him, and now he is parroting the 2A, the Second Amendment line. He's got the script down, no incursions on Second Amendment rights, concealed carry, and so forth. He's winning that crowd over, and the fact that he gets that kind of reception there, and it almost took people by surprise how enthusiastic that was, tells you, again, that he's coalescing the right.
Right, and there are definitely people who are coming from the outside. I mean, when you looked at as they panned the audience, cameras panned the audience, there were people wearing the "Make America Great" campaign gear. That wasn't being sold on the convention floor anywhere. So they were bringing that. These were people coming that were bringing that were already Trump supporters that were coming in for this. His website is clearly pro-2A. It's very solid in that regard. He gave a solid speech in the sense, but I mean, I did chuckle. He made a couple of comments about his sons owning guns. I think he was even kind of worried about how many guns they actually had. And then he also dropped a little thing in there about that he carried. And some things I think that even for those of us in the press that were in the press room, we were kind of chuckling as many pro-2A people that were in there, thinking like, this is so typical Donald Trump. But yeah, the NRA did do the endorsement. The only thing I did see was on social media was that there was a little bit of backlash from some people about how they're not going to renew their membership, or how they were glad they didn't renew their membership and things like that. So maybe those people, I didn't really look at it closely. Maybe some of those were already kind of in the Never Trump movement, and they thought, well, this is kind of the last straw now. He's crossed this one. I'm not going to do that. Once again, I think we've talked about this before. There's still time to maybe turn some of these people around, because I think if they really think this election is important as you and I both do, those people have to change their minds.
He said he carries a gun all the time.
Well, he said he carries. It was a little bit unclear as to what he was referring to, whether or not he actually had a carry permit, or whether he carries a gun. It doesn't seem like this is anything that Donald Trump would have done. I mean, I was sitting there thinking, like, I don't understand this. Yeah, that would be a revelation. I want to see that. I want to see the permit. I want to see the gun. Okay,
yeah.
Let's go. Maybe Hillary can call him out on that. Maybe if her people were taking notes on that. I don't know. That was rather amusing to me.
You have people who are paid to like dive on you if anything happens and take the bullet.
Right.
So, wow. Anyway.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting. It's just we are talking Donald Trump here. Remember, that's in the larger context of things.
Nothing can surprise you anymore.
So, talking about Hillary, she's kind of got her campaign slogan, "The Stronger Together." What the heck does that mean?
It's real interesting, because if you put those two slogans side by side, "Make America Great Again," "Stronger Together." Okay, their thing implies that everything we do is a communal effort, right? The whole question in American politics is how much of what we do is communal, right? We do military communal. We don't each have our own military, right? We do, ports and tariffs and so forth as communally, right? But now what they want is for us to think of, like, everyone's health care is everyone's responsibility. That's a political question, and my answer to that is no. I'm not responsible. I'm responsible for mine and my family, and I think we're stronger if we think about taking care of our own. That will enable you to take care of others, rather than being forced to do it. And her thing is, we know better than you how to spend your money.
Do you think that was also, though, a little bit of a stab at Bernie Sanders and trying to create some unity in the party, because they're really lacking that unity right now?
They had some serious problems with that. What is it? A third of the Bernie people are saying they'd never Hillary. So where do they go? Now they're about up as many as 20% are saying to Trump. If they don't get Bernie in there some which way, they're going to Trump. I'm wondering how close the contacts are between Bernie and the FBI, because I bet they are carefully monitoring. I bet he does care about her damn emails now.
Right. And so now, and then talking even about this unity issue, is the story now that's coming out that the Democrats are seriously thinking about dumping Debbie Wasserman Schultz as their chair. Now, she's held that position for about 5 years right now. She has actually been endorsed by a Republican super PAC. They thought this was great because she is bringing civil disharmony, or whatever they said in their statement, to that. So kind of creating a civil war within the Democratic Party. So the Republican super PAC thought that was a great idea. But she has been, if you're a Democrat, I think you have to say she's an utter disaster. If you're a Republican, you're like, keep opening your mouth, Debbie, because it's great for us.
It's a gaff machine. Couldn't explain the difference between Democratic Party and socialism.
That's right. That's right.
You got to have that answer, right? Essentially, they asked her, and then there was hoopla about her not being able to answer, and then 2 weeks later, someone said, "So, Debbie, what is the answer? Just straighten us out here." It still didn't have an answer. It's like, because there's not a lot of difference. Right now, the case against her is pretty strong that Bernie makes. He's like, you signed a deal with Hillary, to share data, right? And then 2 months later, you decided that we had done something wrong and shut us out of what is supposed to be the communal data. So all the information collected by the Democratic Party for fundraising purposes was available to Hillary in the 2 months before Iowa and New Hampshire, but not to Bernie. So it's not really a surprise that Bernie has surged late, right? She had all the info, and he didn't for a critical 2 months of this race, all because, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who was her 2008 co-chair of her campaign, was rigging, in a position to rig things for her.
Right, and as the party chair, technically, I mean, she really should be neutral at this point, letting the process go and see. But we can see from what you're talking about and just the other things that she said on the air that this process definitely favors Hillary. She's in the tank for Hillary. She's talked about the superdelegates, which are virtually all in Hillary's camp, that will not sway this process. But that is going to be the big difference. I mean, if you I said this last week. If you take superdelegates out, this is a pretty even race, and Bernie has a shot. But those superdelegates, they tip the scales, and and that's exactly what Debbie Wasserman Schultz and establishment Democrats want. They want Hillary, not Bernie.
Right, and it's gotten to the point where right now he's probably the more popular candidate among Democrats. She also has. That's another thing. She rigged that aspect of it too. The president and or the nominee appoints the chair. So if Hillary gets the nomination, she won't leave because she's doing what Hillary wants, right? But it's interesting. They have a legitimate case, and since they have a legitimate case, Philly is going to be nasty.
Right, yeah, and Bernie Sanders doesn't really think that's going to be a problem.
Yeah,
and
he's all for it.
It's definitely made me think about taking a drive up to Philly when the time comes and looking around.
Nearby, not too nearby, but somewhere.
I need my
see.
safe zone, okay?
That's right.
Can I have my safe space, my safe zone, please? Thank you, yes. Let's talk just briefly about another story that popped up this week was one of Donald Trump's favorite reporters, Michelle Fields. She is now joining the Huffington Post, a very liberal website, and which is kind of an interesting thing. Here's a very conservative writer, worked for Breitbart. She left Breitbart when all this assault charge kind of thing came up, and kind of felt that they hadn't supported her and she'd been wronged. And I've seen a lot of division with conservatives about did it really happen? The video wasn't exactly clear. The Palm Beach, the state attorney's office declined to prosecute. They said there wasn't enough criminal evidence there to prosecute this on a criminal basis. But she's already come out. I think her first appearance as an official reporter, person for Huffington Post was that she said that Hillary shouldn't treat Trump as a serious candidate, which is basically what Hillary was saying. I don't need to treat him as. So what's going on with Michelle Fields, and what the heck's happening here?
Well, did you see the picture on the internet this week of the Huffington Post editorial meeting?
Oh yes, right, exactly. Good point. Good point. Yeah,
a lot of diversity there. Yeah, every single one of them a white woman. Every person, and it's 30 of them sitting at that table.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, as you brought that up, let me just say, that what interesting about that thing was that they tweeted that out.
Right.
I mean, it wasn't somebody else happening to be there that tweeting that out to show that all of this, but they were doing that. And what was the caption or something like, do you notice something or something like that? Yeah, and what did everybody notice? Is like, where's the diversity?
That's right.
So yeah, I don't know. Is that part of it? Is that Michelle Fields as a woman?
You can see that kind of meeting cooking up that kind of idea. Let's get this girl woman who is, got a grudge against Trump and aim that little missile at Trump. And, she comes right out and does what she's supposed to do. There's a lot of people on the right, who will be giving her things to use for stories against Trump. Yeah. Max Boot is on every day, pounding. Romney, Bill Kristol, a lot of the media establishment, conservative media establishment in Washington is participating in this.
So just out of curiosity, I mean, what do you think happens to Michelle? She continues on this basis. Say Trump does lose the election, is she somewhat vindicated for her efforts of being kind of this puppet or whatever you want to call it of Huffington Post? Does she have a career in conservative journalism again, or is she just going to become a pariah for some people? What's your feeling about that?
She could be you could see her being the token conservative on MSNBC shows.
Well, they have plenty of those.
Things like that, right? And there's a little market for I used to be that and now I'm this. Not self-loathing, but sort of that, right? But yeah, there's a market for that. I don't think she'll be out of work. Also, there's not really a lot of people who can do those jobs. It looks easy, but you got to be able to gather news, work sources, work quickly under demanding circumstances, file on time, There's really a pretty small subset of people who are capable of doing that.
Yeah, I'm gonna say just for clarification or for purposes, is that I've never been a huge fan of Michelle, but she has carved a nice career for herself. I am just kind of curious as to where she goes from here, having really kind of switched sides. But maybe that is part of the angle, is that MSNBC might be eagerly waiting to have her on multiple times, and she can build it that way.
And she can make the case that she didn't switch sides.
Yeah.
That there are still, you can stay conservative and be critical of Trump.
Right, and with the Never Trump people and all these other things going. So yes, I think you're right there. Let's just quickly talk about the overtime pay rule that's going into effect. So now, salaried workers that are being paid less than $46,476, it's basically been more than a doubling of the amount, where they will now be entitled to overtime as salaried workers. There are reports in terms of whether or not this is actually going to help employment or not. Definitely a headache for a lot of employers in trying to keep track of hours. But I guess I could see the one angle of, well, you're going to now be watching how many hours the salaried workers are, and when they hit that 40, you might want to hire somebody else and pay them at the regular rate, because otherwise you're facing time and a half, right? Or something.
It's the Obama economy. Everybody gets a small part-time job that doesn't pay well.
Yeah.
If you want it. Otherwise you don't have to work. From the standpoint of the numbers there, 23 was probably too low, 46 is probably too high. But the big picture is, why is government setting rates? Why is government negotiating between me and my employee?
Right.
If I don't like what I'm making, my option is to go work for your competitor, right? Who pays better? Why are they in the position of making this deal anyway?
Because we continue to see this onslaught of the federal government getting involved in other people's business where they have no right.
They have no business.
Right. So it is kind of ridiculous. I think you're right that the old rate was probably too low, probably needed to be raised. But I think they stretched it and went a little bit too far. And adding jobs is one thing, but you want to add good full-time jobs. In essence, they're just going to be adding a bunch of part-time jobs, as you alluded to. And
but you look at the whole history of the Obama administration, the Affordable Care Act. What did it do? It created, if you work 30 hours, then they have to treat you as a full-time employee, pay all these things. So all these little measures, all through what he has done as president, that encouraged part-time work, encouraged treating your employees worse.
Right. All right, we've got a few minutes left. Let's talk really briefly about the article that you just published in Breitbart about the United States Postal Service. Give me a little bit of insight here in terms of, it is a money-losing operation. I wonder why the heck it's still around. But
it is a money-losing operation. The reason it's still around is no one else would do it. You could find people to do most of it, and then by most of it, in the mid-90%, but that last 5% is tough, right? And plus, in a lot of places, the post office is a gathering place. It's where, it's the footprint of the federal government in every town in America. So, saying, let's get rid of it is not realistic. But what the post office does is they do things like in Manhattan, they take fish off the fish docks, right, and deliver fish to restaurants. Okay, now that's not, it's moving something from one place to the other, but that's not their job. So to do that, they have to buy vehicles equipped to do that, right? You have to have people trained to do that, and that's not your mission. And they get into these business arrangements and lose all this money. Now, they have the problem with they're required to pre-fund their benefits. And the payment set was set when their volume was 40% higher before the economic collapse. So that needs to be fixed. And there's a bill in Congress to fix it now. But their thing is to get out of the fish business. They have a thing that competes with Peapod, where you call it, they'll bring you your groceries. They don't need to be doing that. They need to be delivering letters and packages. If they will do that, they'll make pretty good money.
Yeah, that's just kind of ridiculous. My local post office was on the shutdown list. It was saved, but I don't really understand why. I rarely ever go to the post office anymore for my services. And that post office, when I go to that little branch, not too many people are there, and the service is now really atrocious. It was okay before, but it's just horrific now. So the whole, you can't get rid of it because how are you going to deliver to all these rural areas?
Right.
You know, UPS or FedEx would love to have some of the business, but they would basically be cherry picking the best parts.
Right. And
So-
you know, who's going to take it to Ketchikan Island in Alaska?
Right. Hersheys announced this week that you can use whatever bathroom you want. There's a lot of explosion about things that, this whole transgender thing. I just want to say on this whole issue that why did it become this big issue? What was happening before? Nothing seemed to bother. I wasn't even thinking about this before. Now they've they come out and make this edict, and now we're all getting all hot and bothered about it because now we're starting to think about what's going on there, and we're starting to see a little bit of that creep of where these people are now identifying they're trying to get into the other bathroom. I don't know. The whole thing's getting out of hand.
Right. It's encouraging people to do this who
Yes.
had never had the guts to do it before. Who thought it would be funny, but didn't do it. Right. Right. And why? My question is, did someone ask Target? Did someone ask Hershey? Did someone say, "Hey, what's your transgender policy?" Or did they just say, we're going to preemptively come out and say we're more holier than thou on this issue?
Yeah, and once again, it goes back to that we're pandering to a teeny tiny part of the population, and
backed by people who, the politically correct crowd.
Right.
So it's not just that 0.8% or whatever it is, right? It's them plus, the same people who want to have piss Christ and all this kind of stuff.
right.
It's the same crowd.
All right, we're going to finish up with our usual little sports brief. Tom Brady, he's back in the news. He's going to appeal. I mean, I guess he's willing to take this thing all the way to the Supreme Court. I guess personally, I kind of wish that they would just get this done with. Maybe appeal to Goodell, and maybe Goodell can just give him a 2-game suspension or whatever and move on. I think you take a little stronger stance on Tom.
Well, first, to be clear, what he is in court about is not whether he deflated the footballs. He did. It is whether Goodell has the right to punish him. And if this gets decided in his favor, it turns professional sports on its head. How do you discipline players? How do you enforce the collective bargaining agreements? I mean, that's the enforcement mechanism for all those things. It also could have, how can the NCAA put schools on probation? All those questions come if the head of a sport can't enforce the rules of the sport. The rules don't mean a whole lot.
And then why do you have a commissioner to begin with? What's
Right.
You've stripped him of the biggest power that he has. I mean, they need to enforce some order and things like that. If you take that away from them, what are they able to do? I mean,
Right.
and then who will listen to them?
Right. And it's like we say down in Louisiana, there's no man, there's no law.
All right, and then we talk briefly about the Nationals. They're still in first place. They're having a series now with the Mets, and so they split the 2 games so far. Gio didn't pitch so well the other night, but boy, Strasburg. The last thing I ever thought I'd see Strasburg at 8-0.
Right. He pitched really well. He's earning that money.
Yeah.
It's a big stack of money. The other thing I would say about them is let it not go unnoticed how much better managed they are. Just one snapshot of that. The steals against the Nationals is at less than 1/5 of what it was this time last year. They control the running game. They worry about all that little, pick-off throws and positioning to keep people from stealing, right? Matt Williams' attitude was, our pitchers are so good, I don't really care if you steal. And we lost a lot of games over that, right? Because everything you don't, baseball, you put a guy who can't catch in right field, the first ball is going where? Right field, right? Every little sin you commit is punished to the max.
Right. So and Dusty's done a pretty good job.
Yeah.
I mean, he's not afraid to tinker with the lineup. He's moved run down in the order, and then his bat has come alive. So you see some of these things. Not every move a manager makes will always work, but
Or will be obvious to us.
Or obvious, but he's definitely much more of the baseball thinker. He really knows the game a lot better than Williams did. Williams was much more willing to let things go. Baker doesn't want to have those mistakes come back and haunt him game after game. So he does a really good job, I think, of doing that. He's got a great pitching coach. It's really helped the pitching staff this year, I think, too. So it's going to be a dogfight, I think, with the Mets. But if the Mets keep pitching Matt Harvey against the Nationals, that's great.
Bring it on, baby.
Because I don't know. Matt Harvey is just a
We
shell
like
of
his
himself.
style.
Yeah, we like his style. We can get 3 to 5 home runs a game off that guy every time. That's great. All right. Well, that's all the time we have for this week. And thank you, Brian, for joining me again. And thank you those for out there listening and watching us on Facebook Live. Don't forget to follow us on social media, both at Accuracy and Media, for both Brian and I on our personal accounts. And we'll keep you informed. And then until next week, in another edition of the Bias Buzz. Thank you.